Welcome to another episode of the Procurement Pulse, where we seek to demystify and simplify the procurement process. I'm your host, Dwayne. Now, today we have a very interesting guest with us, none other than Mr. Richard Panton, who has spent almost 2 decades as a procurement practitioner and an IT specialist also. So Panton has been someone that has been a feature in public sector procurement, and today he's here to share some of his insights with suppliers and how they can pretty much learn some of the things that he has garnered over the 2 decades. Richard, welcome.
Thanks, Dwayne. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So, Richard, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came into being a procurement specialist.
Uh, it's it's been an interesting journey, and I believe most persons don't recognize procurement as a profession, and so likewise, I am an ICT specialist. From I discovered ICT, as I've always loved it, and where I used to work, we engineers do procurement, and so procurement was a means to an end.
Mhm.
However, I was, what's the word? I guess requested to create a procurement department for a government entity, and they're responsible for ICT for all of the GOJ. And I took it up as that challenge. There were other benefits, of course, but it's from there that I recognized just starting a department, running a department,
Mhm.
and then seeing all the things that were possible in procurement, yet still the practitioners and other persons in and around procurement weren't using all of the tools and procedures and processes and just information that was there. And that kind of started my journey. And I've been doing procurement training for around 8 years now,
Oh,
not just here in Jamaica, but across the Caribbean. Almost every Caribbean country I've been to deliver training. And I, it's on my mother's side of the family, we're all teachers and trainers,
okay, okay.
and I think
So
I
you just continue.
I just continue, and I really love it. I really do love it. So
Okay,
that's what got me where I am now.
okay. What are you doing now?
I am the I program manager for the Policy Transformation Program. So I work
Mhm.
with the Transformation Implementation Unit since 2017.
Okay. Any procurement transformation is a part of that?
Uh, Actually, yes. Not I would say I was initially going to say not by design, but actually yes by design.
Ah,
Um, it I believe it was more fortuitous that procurement became a part of the program through the shared services.
mhm.
So we are looking to put in place what we call a purchase to pay shared service
Oh, okay.
to assist the GOJ in taking that next step to more advanced, let's call it procurement methodologies.
Why is that important? How would a supplier benefit from such an initiative? Or is that something that is only for practitioners and the government to benefit from?
Uh, it's it's not just for practitioners at all. Actually, it provides more, what's the word, opportunities for
Mhm.
suppliers to participate in the procurement process because they can be a part of a wider agreement. So, in summary, what is being done is we're putting in place, uh, first thing is what we call a catalog purchasing or e-purchasing, where suppliers can maintain a catalog of their products and services that would allow MDAs to then go online and purchase directly from a catalog of a supplier.
Who you call MDAs?
So MDAs is ministries, departments, and agencies.
So
So
pretty much everybody, everything that is government that people buy from that any government entity would buy, pretty much.
right, typically. So catalog purchasing usually starts out with what we call low risk, relatively low value items,
Mhm.
um, but high in volume. And so you have these small purchases, small value, but we do a lot. We talk about stationery, commodity type items, like even computers, etc. These are done through the e-catalog system,
Mhm.
and one of the key benefits for suppliers when we look at the purchase to pay is that it connects not just the acquisition side, but the, the requisition side as well, and payment. So we automate the payment process to the point where a supplier, once they have an order has been placed with a supplier, they deliver the order, the ministry department or agency signs off on it. Mm-hmm. They upload that into the system along with their invoice, and it automatically generates payment.
So pretty much what the government is working towards then is removal of the payment problem.
Trying to. So right. Yeah, so for these procurements, definitely, because what we have in place now and that we're currently at the testing stage is automatic processing of invoicing. And that will now integrate with the government financial management system, which will then trigger the payment. So the issue that we see suppliers having where, I know a lot of suppliers out there will experience this, is payment terms of 30, 60, 90 days, where, and some of that is because the invoice is not being processed or the delivery slip hasn't been signed off. Once you have all those in place, it's automated. So you're not dependent on an individual to actually execute the work. It's done automatically.
So no longer will we be losing invoices at somebody's desk. Well, hopefully.
Hopefully. Definitely not, because it's a supplier who has a responsibility to upload the invoice. And that's the thing that's going to change. You don't just send an invoice in.
So it's not the practitioners anymore that will. So the suppliers, so I hope everybody listening now, suppliers will now have the responsibility to determine how fast you get paid.
Yes.
Yeah. So you make sure that you get all the things signed off and then you upload it. I mean, that's a world that I want to operate in.
And that sign off that you're talking about with the approval for delivery. So that delivery slip and the approval delivery slip, the supplier needs to ensure they get that so that they can upload it into the system along with the invoice. And just also ensuring that the invoice is structured as per the contract, because that's one of the things that will be verified by the system.
Okay, that's great. So that sounds like something that is a little futuristic. Probably, I mean, to how we know government moves slow, probably another 40 years before. But tell me something what are some of the trends that we can look forward to coming in 2025 that persons who may be suppliers now, and then persons who are thinking about becoming a supplier, but they haven't really taken that step yet. What are some of the trends coming in like probably the next year that, the supplier market can look forward to?
So let me just say for sure, given where we are within the implementation of the purchase to pay, by the next fiscal period,
in the GOJ, that is like what, March? That's April
2025. Yeah. So by April 2025, you're going to see suppliers being invited to upload their catalogs into the system for a specified number of products. So we have pre-selected some products based off research, engaging with the ministries, departments, and agencies to find out, what they buy, and also talking with the market space, because one of the things that anything that the government is doing, suppliers also need to be able to do it. And when it comes to e-purchasing, that's one of the things that we've spoken to a few suppliers, and we're still going through the process of trying to figure out, would you be able to participate in that process? So I would say suppliers should start reading up about that, especially stationary suppliers, because that's one of the first set of products. Stationary suppliers, they should start figuring out and learning from other jurisdictions how they operate e-catalog systems, because it's a new way of thinking. In terms of other trends, especially when you talk about technology, I don't think there are many other things on the horizon. I would say, though, that over the last year or so, the government has mandated the use of the EGP system. And even though
GP is the electronic procurement system.
electronic government procurement,
Use. I want to go back to the e-catalog. So I know you say you pre-selected some suppliers and you pre-selected some items. Are you able to say what are some of the items pre-selected and what will somebody need to do to be a part of that program?
Right. No, so we haven't pre-selected the suppliers, just the goods, the items. Mm-hmm. So just going based off memory, paper, various size paper, letter size, legal paper. There are a few stationary items like pens, pencil. It's about 15 items, mm-hmm. categories of items. Those are the ones that I remember right now.
Okay.
But the idea is, given that this is new for Jamaica, we have to go through the process, and we have a whole team. We have a separate program manager for this. There are specialists, so we have a subject matter expert who used to work in the private sector in catalog purchasing, who is working with us now with the government in order to build out the entire procedure. Because the GOJ, even though legislatively it is mentioned in our framework, there are no guidelines. So we're working closely with the Office of Public Procurement Policy, and who are part of the team as well, mm-hmm. to put in place to execute the pilot, learn from the pilot, and then move to the full rollout. So we have market engagement with suppliers, asking them questions, asking them about the feasibility and also their readiness to then chart the path for how best do we roll out this, let's call it, new service. Let's call it that, our methodology.
So how would a supplier qualify to be a part of this e-catalog system?
That's still to be determined at this point in time. We want to, what suppliers will see for sure is a open process. So how catalog purchasing works in all jurisdictions is that the initial invitation is open. So all suppliers will see through the EGP system, of course, the electronic government procurement system, an invitation to submit an either expression of interest or similar tool that will request information on their qualification, their goods or services, and from that, they will be a part of a short list of persons. And some persons may know the term framework agreement, and so they will eventually become a part of this framework agreement for these goods. And the system is just going to be executing what is detailed, or the terms and conditions detailed in the framework agreement.
Okay.
So our suppliers will see that.
So this framework agreement is just something that the government used pretty much to kind of group certain like items and arrange prices, and there's no predetermined value necessarily.
It depends. So framework agreements is defined as a set of terms and conditions for which future, what we call call-offs, will be made. A call-off is also a contract. So the agreement itself is not a contract. The call-off is the actual contract. So some of the terms could be price. Price could be a term, or maybe a price range could be a term, but definitely things like
paper,
specifications, details, paper, the weight of the paper, color of paper. Those requirements would be detailed.
So you would be saying, for example, you want me to give you letter size paper, whatever the weight may be, at a particular price, and then hold that for a particular period of time.
Could. Price is not always, some practitioners believe price is mandatory in a framework agreement. That absolutely isn't. It depends on the market space that you're operating in.
But I mean, as I said, I want to just kind of jump off topic a little bit. But isn't there a case where we know that the government only go with the cheapest price?
That actually came up in a recent discussion we'll have at a, let's say, a sensitization session with many suppliers. And actually, the legislation right now, let's say, stipulates, I was going to say mandate, but stipulates that supplier procuring entities should choose the most economically advantageous tender. However, based off a recent assessment that was done on the GOJ, in practice, yes, most government entities do choose the lowest, what we call substantially responsive tender. That is changing. We have, coming out of a recent assessment, we had a external consultant execute what we call a MAPS assessment, and MAP stands for methodology for assessing procurement systems. Mm-hmm. And what that does is, based off a specified framework, they assess a country's procurement system based off global procurement standards. Mm-hmm.
And I guess that is saying Jamaica is down at the bottom then in comparison to other places.
Absolutely not. Jamaica is actually well positioned compared to entities or jurisdictions larger and smaller than Jamaica, or even could be considered more advanced economies. We are in a good spot. However, we are at a, let's call it a plateau. Our procurement systems are good. They're excellent. However,
careful, Richard.
We concentrate too much on compliance.
I just need to be careful, because from the supplier side, I can tell you the system is very, very much biased, is what we suppliers will say.
I've heard it, and the benefit I have is that I have, unlike some practitioners, I engage with a lot of suppliers, and one of the things that I say to suppliers is there are perceptions on both sides, and funny enough, if you talk to practitioners say suppliers are corrupt. And if you talk to suppliers say practitioners are corrupt. And the government already decide who they want to win the contract. And these are all misconceptions. But the fact that you have both sides of this equation saying that the other side is corrupt means that we have a perception problem. And you have an information problem, which is probably by design, erroneously. Governments don't like to share information. And without transparency, it means that persons can
you write your own story.
Yeah, you write whatever story you want. I like that phrase. You write your own story. And so suppliers don't give enough information to the practitioners. The practitioners also don't ask for the information, also don't provide information. So you find that we end up in this stalemate now. And I see it pretty obvious. It's very obvious to me that we need to be more transparent on both sides. And just to say, the policy team within the Ministry of Finance, procurement policy team, they recognize this problem and they're pushing for that change now. So you asked about technologies. I would say not much in terms of technology is coming other than catalogs earlier, but for sure a change in the way that we see procurement, that's what is being pushed for.
So with this change that is coming, it kind of triggers something else in my head, right?
Sure.
Because the cataloging system now sounds like the guys who are very big are going to become even bigger, because they will have the advantage of being able to dedicate hundreds of staff to just be watching this thing all the time. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I just come in the business and bring in a container, not a container, probably a truckload of paper, and where an entity used to just call me directly, them now go on the system and them now put out this thing publicly for everybody. Is it that now going to make me a micro business worse off? The question behind it is, how can a smaller supplier position themselves now with what is to come to compete against larger suppliers? Because there's also that perception that the system is so designed for only large suppliers to participate. So how will smaller suppliers now participate in that market now that you're opening it up so wide?
So one of the key things that the data shows, because I'm somebody who likes to look at data and garner conclusions from the data rather than a feel or perceive what is there. Mm-hmm. If you look at any sector, that exists, no matter what. We're talking about stationery, but any other sector that you looked at, any sector at all. If you look at the number of suppliers in that sector who are registered or able to have a company, so not talking about registration with the Public Procurement Commission, but registration with the Companies Office, you will find that there are hundreds of persons within that sector. However, if you compare that with the number of persons who participate in government procurement, you find that the percentage is now down to 4% of the people in that sector. And when you go and you ask now, why is that? The government has some responsibility as well, but the suppliers also have a responsibility to in with that low percentage, because they aren't going out trying to learn public procurement, which is one of the key things that I think suppliers need to do in order to participate. When I'm engaging with suppliers, there are a lot of misconceptions that they have without ever participating in the process. One that came up very recently, person say government already choose who they want to award the contract with. And I one supplier actually said to me, um, with all this competition thing, is that really true? And having trained both suppliers and practitioners, I recognize that there it's just misconception. If you don't actually try, if you don't actually learn, because you can start a process, you can start to go into a system, but if you don't learn the system before you go in, you will fail. I mean, chances are a higher probability that you fail. But if you want to be successful, then you need to learn the system, learn the rules, learn how to participate. And the thing with the e-procurement system, um, and this is data that's shown here in Jamaica and also across other jurisdictions, just the transparency of the system, meaning the opportunity is now more readily available, persons are more willing to take that step. And so even that micro supplier will now have the ability to put their systems out. And instead of that one person that knows them and knows that they can get these products from them quickly, you will have a lot more persons being able to see this individual. So it's a new way of doing business, and it provides these micro suppliers with the opportunity. And the statistics are there. I can speak to one country, Italy, uh, through their EGP system, some 75% of their contracts are awarded to SMEs, small and medium enterprises, 75% of their procurements through their EGP because of the EGP system. And this is a growth from when it was implemented in 2010. They've just seen it grow year on year. They didn't expect that. That actually wasn't a target. But these are the things that happen.
What are some of the things? Thank you for that, Richard. What are some of the things, training, um, certifications, if any, licenses, etc., that suppliers can now start to get themselves together, so that they can actually improve their chances of success in 2025 and beyond?
And beyond,
Yes.
sure. Um, I would say it's two things I should concentrate on. And the first one is their own competitive market position. Having a good product and service is the first step. Training is the second thing that I believe that suppliers need to concentrate on.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't many opportunities for training, I would say, locally. You do have a few. The International Procurement Institute in IMPRI does training for practitioners, but you do have suppliers who actually come to that training. And I think that's good. I actually love when practitioners are in the training session when suppliers are with practitioners
Mm-hmm.
in a training session, because there is a misconception that practitioners and suppliers should not talk. And so, as I mentioned earlier, this lack of information sharing is a problem. Some the just this podcast itself, um, the Procurement Pulse.
Mm-hmm.
I How did I come upon it? Um, I think I saw it through the social media, and I thought this was excellent. I thought it was really the to me the first of its kind, in order to reach out to, it wasn't just practitioners but also suppliers as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to see more suppliers engaging. I look at the comments, and I would love to see more suppliers actually asking questions. And um, there is, I think you offer training as well to
Yeah.
to suppliers,
Mhm.
and you have a book which I'm still waiting on my signed copy, but I do know it's
It
available
is
on
here.
Amazon.
Your
It's here.
signed copy is
It's
here.
here. Okay, great.
Yes.
And it's taking that proactive step in learning, and uh, I, it sounds strange, but people fear the unknown,
Mhm.
and you write your own story about the unknown.
Mhm.
But if you, I would say for suppliers, go out. And the thing is, the way that we do procurement here in Jamaica is not different than the international standards.
Mm.
Um, it is the same.
So
So,
you're saying again that how procurement is done in Jamaica, as slow as we hear that the system is, this is how it is done worldwide.
yes,
Wow.
some 80-90% of it is exactly the same.
Wow.
The rest of it is customized for each jurisdiction, and also customized for the culture,
Mhm.
which adds its own problems. So
Can imagine that.
when you talk about timing, we have a very bureaucratic system with
Mhm.
some 7 levels of approval for a single procurement.
Wow.
And in a recent session I did with suppliers, they did not know or understand the approval levels.
So that comes back to understanding your customer.
Yeah, knowing your
So,
customers. Yeah, if you
so the
don't know,
government has, you say, 7 layers
7 layers.
of approval, depending on how expensive whatever it is that you're
Yeah,
buying
so
is.
just based off the structure of the legislation, at the highest approval tier, it's
Mhm.
7 steps.
Wow.
No, that's minimum, meaning entities sometimes add their own
Own. Wow.
levels of
Wow.
approval.
7 layers of
And
approval.
so, I mean, those things we hope to see changes too. But from a supplier standpoint, just learn them.
Mm.
And then you can start having a different conversation with the your customers who are the MDAs.
Well, on that point of conversation, that's a very interesting point. And I want to ask you though, how can suppliers build relationship with the buyers, the practitioners, the entities? Because you don't want to seem as though you're trying to be corrupt. But so how do you build relationship with ethically build relationship?
Right. So the first thing is understanding the limitations. You you there there is a the culture right now in Jamaica
Mm-hmm.
is that practitioners believe that they shouldn't engage with suppliers. That is not so. That's not the case at all, and we have to dispel that myth slowly. That's not the responsibility of the supplier. That's the responsibility of the leadership and the policy team to try and get that um, way of thinking out. However, while that is happening, suppliers should be reaching out to customers in the normal way that they would, sending brochures, asking about opportunities, having their profiles ready to be able to share with an MDA. Just as how you would learn to sell yourself is the same thing they should be doing. What you
Because the government is a customer.
Because government is a customer. What you don't want to do is, what's the word, overburden. I don't know if that's the right word or phrase, but you don't want to be too pushy on the I was going to say suppliers, because from your perspective, um, so from the perspective of a supplier, your customer is the MDA.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you don't want to seem too pushy to the MDA and to the procuring entity, but you don't want to stand too far back. And there's a very safe middle ground, calling about, asking about opportunities, learning about where opportunities are published. And what other point?
Well, when you say learn about where opportunities are published, there's so we now engage and we're invited. When we're invited, and let's say we lose, which we don't want to lose, but let's say we lose. Is there a way to properly engage to understand from the practitioner, why did I lose?
Mhm.
How can I do better next time?
Right. Absolutely.
Or what are the steps to doing that?
So the first step is to understand, again, your customer by understanding the framework that they operate within.
Mhm.
Within the legislative framework, we have what is called a standstill period. Whether that period is too short or not, you do have that period. And I say that because some of the feedback I've gotten from suppliers is entities are using a standstill. For suppliers who know about it, they say that the standstill period is too short. So let me define what the standstill period is. The standstill period is a period between the intent to award a contract and the actual contract award. So the thing is, a supplier is to be notified that a contract is going to be awarded to X.
So the entity must tell me,
yes,
that they're going to award a contract to you,
yes,
before them award the contract.
Before they award the contract. And that triggers the start of what we call a standstill, where the entity waits to see if suppliers, and in our legislation.
So I can come and say, well, my price is lower than FEMA price, so why am I getting it?
Right. And how you would do that is you would ask for a debrief, and that's the formal term.
How do you ask for that debrief? You just pick up the phone and call?
You can pick up the phone and call, but I would say send an email in. Actually, the EGP system allows you to send in a request for debrief using the EGP system.
Okay.
So I would say get it in writing. That helps your tracking. So do it in writing. So you send that email in asking for that debrief, and the debrief provides you with information on your bid. So it tells you what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and you will get information on simply the ranking of the parties. You don't get all the information.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen suppliers ask for the evaluation report. That is not something that is actually made public, but a debrief will give you a summary about your bid and give you enough information for you to learn. Now,
will that debrief tell, for example, let's say I am the winner, would that debrief tell my competitor what were my strengths and weaknesses?
No, only the strengths and weaknesses of the person requesting the debrief.
Okay,
the only information.
So the entity can't talk about my response.
No.
What can they share from my response in that debrief?
Your cost.
My cost.
Yes. Okay. Because of public information. The contract award details who won. So it said Dwayne won, and the cost of Dwayne's bid was $50,000. That's transparency. Now, if entities are doing it on a regular basis, now we can talk about the lapse that is there. It is not happening as much as it should. Actually, because there's a mandate to use the EGP system now, that is not readily available. Entities, anybody, any citizen, member of the citizen, the suppliers, they can access the GOJEP website. So the GOJEP, the acronym GOJEP, that's the Government of Jamaica e-Procurement, says gojep.gov.jm. If you go there without an account, on the left-hand side, you will see bid open details and you will see contract award details. So you'll see who it is awarded to and the value of the contract that is there. But even if it's not there, you have a right to that information. So ask the supplier, send
you mean the entity?
The entity. Ask the procurement entity. I didn't get a rejection letter. That's what we call it, an award letter and a rejection letter. If you submit a bid and you didn't win, you're supposed to get a rejection letter.
So we're not supposed to sit down and wait forever then to hear that, award that 2 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely not. Once it is awarded, you should have gotten a letter that says, and I mentioned you should get a letter when there's an intent to award. Once you decide on who is going to be awarded, you should have gotten a letter at that point as well to say, no, we're in the standstill, and these are the rank of the individuals. But these are all things that should be happening. And so I would really love for suppliers to start holding ministries and departments accountable by saying, I did not get this. Can I have it? Because you do have that those actions not being done properly.
But what if they ignore me?
You have recourse through the policy team.
That's the team in the Ministry of Finance.
Ministry of Finance, Office of Public Procurement Policy. They're extremely open. For some suppliers, they should know that they have help. If they need to get help submitting a bid, they don't know how to use the EGP system. They actually have a desk and a kiosk at the Ministry of Finance to help persons to submit bids, suppliers submit bids. So they're very open, and they want to know.
So if I as a supplier see a bid and I want some help to submit, is it that they are going to write the bid for me?
No, they won't. But they will help you.
But they will help me upload it. Okay.
Upload it.
Okay. I just want to be clear.
No, and that's fine. And you see, even that process of writing the bid, suppliers need to grow that knowledge within themselves. So bid management is a thing that suppliers must have as a part of their business. How do I manage bids? Right? And
okay. So what are some of the opportunities that suppliers should be doing or be aware of so that they can then take advantage in the new year coming? In terms of their capacity building, what are some of those things based on what you know is to come long term and to come short term? What are some of the capacity building activities that suppliers will now need to start engaging in to take advantage of what is to come?
I feel like kind of repeating. They learning about the customer, extending that to saying, okay, where does my customer advertise opportunities?
So everybody needs to be registered on the EGP as a first step.
Yeah. So where my customer advertises, as a supplier, you should know that the government mandated the use of the EGP system. That's something you should have known. Now, if you're just hearing that the first time from this podcast, then you know that, okay, I need to stop concentrating on looking in the papers. And some suppliers might not even know that they should have been looking in the papers. So it's all tied up in knowing your customer. So one, the registration in the EGP system. They recognize that there's a difference between registering in the EGP system and registering with the Public Procurement Commission. Right?
What's the difference with that?
So the EGP system, Electronic Government Procurement System, is the platform that you want to be registered in to be able to get access to opportunities. The requirements for those opportunities differ depending on procurement, depending on threshold, and other details that would be captured. The Public Procurement Commission has a responsibility through the legislation framework to register entities to be able to receive awards above 1.5 million Jamaican dollars. So for goods and non-consulting services, and for works is above 2 million Jamaican dollars. And this is all by memory. You can actually just check the act. It's there in the first schedule. So it means that for any contract above 1.5 million or $2 million, depending on the type, you need to have a Public Procurement Commission certificate. So that's why it's two different things. So you can be registered in the system, the EGP system, just to see the opportunities. But if you want to qualify for those opportunities, especially if it's above 1.5, then you need to have a PPC certification, and you also need to be tax compliant. And the funny thing is, I mean, just to plug the book, when I scanned through it earlier today, that's mentioned in the book. So they actually have a resource that they can check to see kind of step by step what are the things I need to do. Even if you've been doing government procurement for a while, you might be missing some of these things. Now, so that's the EGP system and the PPC registration. the thing is, the government has actually put both in one. Meaning, when you register and create your EGP account, you can also see a section that deals with the PPC registration.
So you can just continue if you want.
You can continue if you want.
So you can also stop if you don't want.
You can stop if you just want to learn. So if you just come into the marketplace and you want to learn, that's another thing too. Look at the EGP system. You can see all the past opportunities. And I was talking with a supplier a week and a half ago, and they are in let's say, the pharmaceutical market space, and they weren't aware of the National Health Fund. And within the GOJ, they're the number one purchasers of pharmaceuticals. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars every year on pharmaceutical items. And so you would say to yourself, okay, but what are they buying? Go to the EGP system. You go, you search on the competitions, you can filter by the NHF and see what NHF is publishing.
NHF is the National Health Fund. Right.
So therefore, you start to see what they're buying. And so that's a part of your market research.
So you know of an electronic tool that you can use to conduct credible market research in Jamaica.
Yes.
On a market that is responsible for what? 30% of the spend, 30% of GDP, and spending, from the last time I looked at it, couple $1 billion are spent.
3 billion Jamaican dollars in public procurement. It's actually 5.1 or thereabout, but about 2 billion of that is petroleum, and the rest of it is just goods and services and works.
Wow.
So that's you have huge. That information there. You can see that. And so knowing registration through EGP system, getting the information, looking for opportunities, understanding where in the papers people advertise.
Where do they advertise in the papers?
The practice is to publish opportunities in the Gleaner and the Observer on specific days. I believe it's Tuesday in the Observer and Saturday in the Gleaner. The government has a procurement page. We don't have to even worry about that too much because it's digital as well. So the JIS, Jamaica Information Service, if you go to the jis.gov.jm, they have a procurement page, a government procurement page. So the opportunities that are in the Tuesday Gleaner or the Tuesday and Saturday between Gleaner and Observer, they're on the JIS website because they're published through the JIS.
Okay.
So you just need to actually pay attention to that page and you get the same information that was in the procurement page. That's the minimum. You can also look on other days of the week because not because entities need to, at a minimum, advertise in these locations, it doesn't preclude them from advertising other times and other places. So the Sunday Gleaner is one of the most popular, the most read, let's call it, news medium in Jamaica. So therefore, entities take advantage of that by also advertising on the Sunday Gleaner.
Okay.
So you just need to know the minimum and then also look in other spaces. You also have opportunities where people publish. So if you work with the municipal corporations on a regular basis, they even put stuff up on their notice boards. And that's not their
digital notice boards.
No, actual physical notice boards in the parish councils. They put notice up there. Because they do have, and you talk about micro enterprise, they do have some players who are still not fully digital. They're trying to migrate to the digital space because it's actually mandated now above a certain value. So if you want a business to get larger contracts than just the $1.5 million, you're going to have to go into the digital space in some shape or form. And start by just getting an email address. That's actually all you need. Just an email address.
Wow.
And a computer, that's it.
Wow. So you participate in government procurement. You hear from one of the experts in the field. All you need is an email address. Just imagine that. A few episodes ago, we hear all you need is a TRN. So now we have increased it. You have a TRN and an email address and you're ready.
You're ready.
You're ready. Richard, it has been an absolute pleasure to be here with you. Before we go though, is there any little nugget you want to give to suppliers before you leave. I mean, you have had nearly 2 decades of experience looking at bids. What is so? And then tell us something that you see suppliers get wrong all the time that they could probably just tweak that little thing and improve your chance for success.
Okay. I there's so much things that I wanted to say, but when you clarified the question, the first thing that came to mind is about assumptions. It's something that I see suppliers do all the time. They make an assumption and ignore what the entity has written. So, so for example, you see a bid and the person, the procuring entity has asked for a, let's call it a 20,000 BTU air conditioning unit, hypothetically. You know, in your industry, there isn't a 20,000 BTU. You know, it goes from 18 to 24 to 30.
Mm-hmm.
Don't assume and say, okay, well, they must know, say 20,000 don't exist. And no, just to be clear, I'm not saying that those numbers are right. I'm just giving a hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
You know that your industry doesn't make 20,000.
Mm-hmm.
You see this requirement for 20. Don't assume that, you know what, I'm going to submit the 18 because 24 is too big. So I can submit the 18 because it's close to the 20 and it must be accepted. That's an assumption. Ask the question. You have opportunities to submit clarification questions. So send in the questions. Ask the supplier. Don't ask the procured entity. Don't make assumptions. And that's the biggest thing I've seen over and over. Suppliers who make assumptions, they might have the best price. They might be the best service provider in their industry. But if you make an assumption and move forward on that assumption without clarifying it, you will lose out on the opportunity.
All right. That's very important. Thank you, Richard.
Mm-hmm.
So you hear from the expert. Do not make assumptions. And he said earlier that suppliers tend to make assumptions about not just what is being asked for, but also assumptions that the government predetermined who is going to win. Right? So don't make those assumptions. Richard, thank you again for joining us here for a brief conversation. Who knows? We might have to bring you back to talk about some of the things that may be happening when the catalog system goes live.
Sure. Thank you for inviting me. It was my pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Listeners, I want you to stay tuned for another episode on the Procurement Pulse. Follow us on all the social media platforms, YouTube. We are on TikTok. We're on Instagram. Thank you for your time. For those who have not yet subscribed so you get notification whenever we go live. And we're going to have a go live session coming up. There is definitely a training session that is coming up. So stay tuned for that. And thank you again. This has been another exciting episode of the Procurement Pulse. Thank you.